Night, empty entrance. The usual. I come home, switch on the light, throw my jacket on the armchair. Everything seems to be the same. And yet, I feel something's wrong. I glance at my watch, it's 9 o'clock. Natasha should be home by now. I'm so used to this routine that I don't realize it's become part of my life. I walk into the bedroom, and there are pictures on her phone. Something about that picture makes me stop. I don't know why, but something inside me snaps. Roughly and surprisingly quiet. As if I'd touched something forbidden. It's a picture of her, my wife, smiling next to a man I definitely don't know. No, it's not just that I don't know him. I can't even figure out who he is. She is Natasha, beautiful but cold, always reserved and distant. Not that I'm used to understanding her. Rather, I'm used to her just being. Not to ask too many questions. But this picture hits me like a lightning bolt. I bend down to examine it. A moment, and it's as if the world stood still. Everything I knew about my life, about my wife, gone. I no longer see the calm picture I had before. Now all I see is a man beside her, a man I've never met before. He looks confident, too confident. And there's something in his gaze that makes me feel like a stranger. I try to push those thoughts away, but a wormhole of doubt has already crept in. I don't think this is an accident. I guess I just don't know what's going on in her life. And now it's become obvious. I want to tell myself it's an accident. Maybe it's just a friend zone, maybe she's at work. But no. Why does this picture still look like it's all been planned for a long time after all? Like I was a stranger in her life until this moment came. Stranger is the general feeling I have right now. Is it really true? I ask myself, as if trying to convince myself that the photo isn't what I think it is. Everything that was, now recedes into the background. All those years together, when we went out with friends, spent evenings together, when I knew every detail about her money, her job, and her hobbies, now it's all somehow devalued, like a game I didn't know the rules to. My mind is spinning with scraps of thoughts. I'm not wrong, am I? This man, who is he? Why can't I remember his face? But his presence in the photograph was part of my new world, where I was no longer sure of the simplest things. I look at the screen of the phone. Natasha. All this time, she had remained something clear and close to me. We may have argued like all couples do, but we always had one understanding: trust. It was our foundation. And now, out of the blue, a picture of that very foundation ruins everything. I pull my phone away from my eyes, as if trying to erase everything I've just seen. But I know it won't work. Those images are now constantly in front of my eyes, carving themselves into my consciousness. Again and again I pick up the phone, and it's like every movement slows down. Thinking, analyzing, telling myself that this is not what I think it is. I can't believe this is all happening. She couldn't have. I try to reason. And at the same time I realize, I'm not sure anymore. I'm thrown into a cold sweat. You're just not ready for the truth yet. It's like a stabbing thought I can't let go of. And it's like someone invisible is nudging me. Stop deluding yourself, Alexei. It was in your life, but now you're on a different path, and you can't ignore what you've seen. It seems like the world is truly empty now. I have a wife, but she's not there for me. There's an image, but no reality. And now I'm thinking, why didn't I notice sooner? Why do these things only seem important when they appear? Why can't everything just be understood beforehand? But perhaps it's this uncertainty that makes everything more painful. The emotions in my head, in my body, are like knots I can't untie. Where is her truth? What lies behind those eyes, the smiles, the silence? I turn back to the phone again, feeling my fingers refuse to make the right movements. The picture on the screen seems bare, somehow foul, out of place. And then this emptiness fills me. It's not just the picture. It's not just her life. It's my life too. My mistake. My cup of secrets that I'm just now discovering. I'm going back to how I felt before. Doubt, fear, and an overwhelming desire to understand what's happening to me. Why am I in so much pain? The inner voice screams, but there are no answers. I ask myself questions, but I don't hear the answers. It's like a game where you're always a step behind. And now, I'm looking at the screen again. I catch her eye in the picture. It's not her fault, or maybe it is. Either way, things change. I always thought I knew Natasha. Over the years, I had grown accustomed to her. Outwardly, she was quiet, a little closed, but not aloof. I loved her for her confidence, for the way she always stood her ground, for the way she could negotiate with people, for her judgment and independence. We lived in our own separate reality where everything was in its place. And now, after seeing this picture, my life changed. It's as if in 1 second that whole stable world collapsed. Now when I look at her, I can no longer say I see the same woman I've lived with for the past few years. Everything that seemed normal now feels like an illusion. It's like she was hiding a whole world, a world I knew nothing about. I'm trying to remember everything that happened between us. Small details at first, then more and more. How long ago did I start to notice that something was wrong? When we started breaking up, but I didn't see it. She was often late. When she was late, she always said she was late for work. Everything sounded convincing on the phone, the same words, the same reassurance. But now looking back, I realized that her work was beginning to occupy her life more and more. Each time it became a part of her world that I didn't know. I thought it was just too much work. You see, I can't say no, I have to see it through, she would tell me. But after all, she wasn't like that. She had never let work take up her time and energy before. When I tried to hint that she was increasingly missed at home, she just calmly replied that she just needed more time for herself. And now that more time to herself seems like something else entirely. Maybe she was just pulling away so she could have more space to hide something? Or am I wrong? Maybe it's just a common female phrase, nothing suspicious. Could it all be put down to fatigue? Or was it her attempts to hide some part of her life that didn't concern me? Every day, every time she was late, I could feel the distance between us growing. I tried to ignore it. It was easier to explain her behavior to myself as tiredness, a hard day at work, than to admit that something else was going on. And when she started to say often that she was just tired, and I'm going to get some rest, she would close herself off, retreat to her room, to her solitude. I still couldn't find anything suspicious about it. It was her habit, and I should have understood it. But now I realize that these moments were signals. Signals that I didn't hear. Another oddity. Every now and then she would stay home alone, I would go away on business, and when I came back, it was like she was gone. Not in the sense that she wasn't home. But the feeling of emptiness is what was plaguing me. Like something was slipping away in that moment, something invisible that touched her life but wasn't connected to me. I couldn't understand why she was acting this way. Didn't I matter to her? Or hadn't it mattered for a long time? At times I thought she would have preferred that I didn't come back at all. But then again, I didn't want to think that. I knew her confident, sensible, reserved. Was everything really as it seemed? Sometimes she started avoiding me. We'd sit together at the table, and her thoughts seemed to be somewhere far away. She would often stare out the window, seemingly oblivious to her surroundings. It was as if she had her own reality, alien to me, in her head. I would ask her questions, to which she would answer briefly and with restraint. She hadn't been like this before. She was there for me, she was always involved, always on topic. But now it was like she was disappearing from our shared space. I remembered how much she used to love being with me. How we used to laugh, joke, talk about things. It was simpler, lighter, real. And now it was like it was all gone. I knew there was something more behind the silences and excuses. But I didn't want to admit it to myself. It seems to me that I almost never understood her real feelings. I was used to her as she was, reserved, restrained, controlling. But at some point it started to feel strange. Was this how she'd always been? Or was it just that I hadn't seen her inner world changing? The moments when her gaze was blank, when she seemed distant and cold. All these little things now make me uncomfortable. Why didn't I notice it before? Or was I blind? Should I have realized that she was hiding something, that there was something that I wasn't a part of? When did I first realize that something was wrong? I don't know. It started a long time ago, I guess. Maybe it was when she started having a lot more parties with her friends, spending all her time with her colleagues. I thought there just wasn't time, that she needed more socializing with people who understood her. But now that it's all in front of me, I think it was more than that. I don't want to think that she betrayed me. But somehow inside, I can't believe in our relationship anymore. It's all getting fuzzy. Doubts grow like a snowball rolling downhill. Everything starts to seem strange and unclear, as if we've been living in different worlds for a long time, but we don't realize it. Should I have talked to her earlier? The moment I felt her attention going elsewhere? Or was I just unable to believe the obvious? Maybe I was too absorbed in my life to notice her gradually drifting away? Or maybe she herself didn't know how to get out of this irrevocably altered path. I don't. But now, with each new memory, with each detail I recall, I realize more and more that something was wrong. Maybe if I had seen the signs right away, I could have prevented all of this. But now it doesn't matter anymore. Should I talk to her right now? But what would I say? Can I believe her? When everything around me starts to lose its shape and the world seems to be falling apart, I have one desire: to find the truth. To find something that would somehow explain the emptiness. I was willing to do anything to find out what was going on. The moment I held her phone in my hands, I didn't know what was waiting for me. One thought pierced through me: either I would find the answer or I would find myself even deeper in this abyss of doubt. At first I just stared at her screen, trying to figure out what I was looking for. The phone is the final frontier where everything has to be in plain sight. Lots of messages, calls, pictures. If she was hiding something from me, I definitely find it here. But I trusted her. And now I feel like a traitor, ready to invade her privacy. It's not just curiosity, it's searching for something important that I need to understand to justify my feelings. I look through her messages. Just scrolling through them quickly, without meaning, trying to catch one hint, one confirmation that she wasn't telling me everything. There are no texts, just emptiness. All talk about work or empty plans. No phrases hinting at another man. I even felt a little relief, but then I'm immediately overwhelmed by disappointment, as if I'm looking for something I've made up myself, something I've made up in my own imagination. But this picture with this strange man. I don't think I'm just attached to the idea that it means something. No, I know for a fact that something's not right here. There's nothing in these conversations, but that confuses me even more. She wasn't stupid, she knew how to keep things under control. And now I'm trapped. Maybe she just got rid of the compromising data. Erased everything I could find? I'm angry, but I'm trying to be reasonable. There's a reason I started digging into her life. I open her photos. The same ones she took when she was traveling. Nothing special, just the usual shots of her with friends, traveling, her in front of some landmarks. No, nothing that caught my eye. But then why did this picture shock me so much? Why did this shot of her with this man hook me more than all the others? I remember the look on his face, that easy, confident smile he gave her. And the look in her eyes? What was it? Why wasn't there that cold certainty in it that had always been hers? I can't find anything. I don't know what to do next, and suddenly I decide to talk to her friends. Maybe they can at least give me a clue. They're all good acquaintances, of course, but the thought is already clicking in my head: don't trust anyone. Even if they tell the truth, I'll still have my doubts. I know they won't say everything, but I can't stop myself. I realized one thing: if I didn't see something in real life, or hear it from her lips, I would still dig around until I found at least a clue. I call Marina. She's Natasha's friend, always reserved but smart. The one person I thought I could get the truth from. I start a conversation with her, broaching the subject of work. "How's Natasha?" I ask. And I hear an answer that scares me. "Yeah, she's been a bit withdrawn lately. Started talking less, but you know, she's always been like that. She had a lot on her head." I feel something explode inside. I cut the conversation short. Nothing was said to me, but with every phrase she said, I felt more and more alienated. She didn't say anything directly, but her words left strange gaps. Like she was hinting at something, but not revealing it. I decide to keep looking. I can't believe all I find is emptiness. I call her colleagues, try to get any details. But all the answers are the same. Natasha is so focused, she's always at work, she stays out late. But they're all just platitudes. There's no sign of anything hidden. I'm beginning to doubt my investigation. Maybe I'm wasting my time. Maybe I'm making too much up in my head. Every conversation reinforces more and more my dissatisfaction with myself. Everything I try to find leads nowhere. She's always reserved, always serious, always confident. And I don't know how to decipher that. I can feel the darkness enveloping me. Each step in the search for truth only widens the gulf between us. I look at her things, her shoes, the books she leaves on the table. It's as if she leaves without leaving a trace. Even her habit of coming home at the same time, and now, sometimes not coming back until late at night. And now I can't even say these little things are normal. They scare me. Little things that didn't bother me before become signals. But what can I do about it? I don't know. I want to find the truth, but it keeps eluding me. At some point I realize that it's not what I find that scares me the most. It's her reaction that scares me. After all, if she's not hiding anything, why has her behavior changed? Why do I feel like she doesn't trust me? Why have we become such strangers to each other? This is it. My investigation turns out not to be a clue, but more doubt. I can't find any clear evidence. And I don't like it. I didn't know how to begin. That moment when you realize that everything you knew about a person could be a lie, it doesn't come with ready-made words. I couldn't tell myself that I would be ready for this conversation. All I knew was that it was going to happen, like an inevitability. She had to answer. She had to tell the truth. But what if that truth was something far more complicated than I could have imagined? When I saw her standing in our flat, I felt every word I was about to say go blank. I didn't know what to expect from her. But honestly, I was ready for anything. 4 shocked eyes. Tears. Apologies. Just not for what I got. Natasha stood in front of me, as always, a little more aloof than I would have liked. The same familiar facial features, calm, stern, as if she were hiding something. I didn't know what it was, but I knew something was wrong. I was on edge. Everything that was going on inside me, everything I was experiencing was screaming back at me, and you know she's hiding it from you. But you can't understand why. I've decided I'm not going to wait any longer. I'm not going to beat around the bush. If she won't open up on her own, I will open up the process. I pulled out my phone, which held the very same photo. That moment when I felt the ground go from under my feet surfaced in my memory, and there she was again, right in front of me, that same smile, those eyes. Who is he? I said, as if the word came out on its own. My voice shook, I was ready to break, but all I could say was the question that seemed to hang in the air. She looked at me slowly, and there wasn't the shock in her gaze that I'd hoped for. Nor was there fear. There was no guilt. I waited for her to say it was a mistake, to say it wasn't right. But her eyes were calm. She didn't look away, she didn't try to hide. She just kept quiet. What do you mean by that? She finally broke the silence. Her voice was cold, but there was no fear or excuses in it. It was strange. I expected to see at least confusion, at least some attempt to explain how I was in this situation. But no. She didn't even try to make excuses. You don't understand? I repeated, looking into her eyes. I was ready for her to start making excuses, to explain her position. I wanted to see emotion. But instead, I felt the emptiness fill the space between us. I waited for her to give me an answer, but her silence only grew more deafening. I didn't know what to make of it. Shouldn't she have bombarded me with apologies, with explanations? Shouldn't she have shown some remorse? Natasha didn't answer right away. She picked up her cup of tea, set it on the table. She wasn't even nervous, not even embarrassed. I could see her hands shaking a little, but her face remained calm. No, not even calm. It was like it was blocked. How did I know her? I never did. I didn't know what was going on with her. Didn't know who she was in front of me. What do you want, Alexei? She asked. And her voice was empty, aloof. But there was also some subtle mockery in it. It was something unnatural, something I couldn't understand. I want to know the truth. I said, feeling the anger and pain seep into my words. It sounded like a scream. I couldn't contain myself anymore. I was ready for any confession. Just tell me what it was. Just tell me you're not deceiving me. But there was no guilt or excuses in her eyes, just a firm silence. Really? She repeated, and there was almost a sneer in her voice. You want to know the truth? Do you yourself, Alexei, know what the truth is? I felt a flutter of anxiety in my chest. This wasn't just a game. This was the moment when everything was starting to fall apart. She didn't look away. Her eyes weren't the same as before. They were eyes that weren't looking for an apology. She was willing to keep her silence, willing to leave me alone with my questions. You can't tell me it's just a mistake. I almost shouted, but all she did was tilt her head, as if pondering my words. No, it's not a mistake, she said, and her voice became a little softer. But not a tone of comfort. She just said it as a fact. And that's when I felt a stone drop in my heart. It wasn't the answer I'd hoped for. And all I could do was keep quiet. Silence and try to digest those words. "What do you want from me, Alexei?" she asked, and I heard a strange weariness in her voice. I felt the world around me begin to crumble. I looked for someone to blame, but her calmness, her silence, and those words shattered all my perceptions. "I want to understand," I shouted, not knowing what to do. "I want to understand what you're hiding, what's going on with us. Why can't you just explain it to me?" She looked at me, and her look was almost pitying. But not pity for me, but somehow from above. Like I was my own enemy. As if I didn't need to explain anything. I felt sickened by the situation. This wasn't the conversation I dreamed of having. "What do you want to understand, Alexei?" Her voice became completely quiet, barely audible. "Everything is as it is. Everything you didn't want to see, you just didn't see. All you didn't want to know was that you closed your eyes. You didn't hear me when I told you I was having a hard time. You didn't hear me when I told you I was missing something more. But you were always in your own world where everything was normal. Where I was there for you, where I was your wife. But now you want to find the reason in other men. Other men. It's all too late, Alexei." Those words of hers, they weren't what I expected. It wasn't an admission of infidelity. It was an admission that we had simply become strangers to each other. And no matter how hard I tried to find an explanation, I couldn't understand how it had happened. How could I not see that all this time we had both been living in different worlds? "You don't love me?" I asked, even though the answer had long been obvious. She didn't answer. Just looked at me. And all I felt in that moment was a sense of emptiness. The moment I walked out of her room, the moment I walked away from the conversation, from this violent confrontation, I felt everything inside me shrink. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to think. But one thing was clear. I couldn't live with this uncertainty any longer. This emptiness. I didn't know what it was hiding. I didn't know what the silence stood for. I didn't know what to think about myself, our life, and what in my head began to crumble. I couldn't close my eyes to the truth anymore. I was on the brink. I go back into that empty cold flat that had essentially stopped being a home a long time ago. I stand in the corridor, wondering what to do next. I remember her words. "You didn't hear me when I said I was having a hard time." But what did she mean? That she was having a hard time? Why didn't I notice? Why didn't I listen to her voice, to her silences, to these words that should have alerted me? I decided I couldn't take it anymore. All I had learnt was a shock, these shards of my reality that would now change me forever. If she won't talk to me, I'll make her. I will demand an explanation from her. I must know the truth. And I will go to her again. Not to accuse her. No, I've already realized that blaming is too easy. I want to understand. In the evening, I decide I can't sit around wondering any longer. I go to her room, knowing that I will meet her gaze, that cold gaze I once called familiar. She looks at me, but her eyes no longer have the detached confidence I'm used to seeing in them. She doesn't look away, but she doesn't say anything either. She just sits there, as if waiting. "Natasha," I begin. My voice sounds harsh, not yet sure how this conversation is going to continue. She looks at me, and there is no terror in her gaze. There is no fear. There's just the same calm look. As if she's been preparing for this for a long time. "You've figured it out by now, haven't you?" she asks, and her voice isn't the same now as it was before. It's much softer now. But that doesn't make it any less heavy for me. I can feel that heaviness pressing down on me more and more. "Yes," I say. "I can't live in this shadow, Natasha. You're hiding something from me, aren't you? I want to know the truth. I want to hear it from you." She is silent. She sits in front of me and watches. And in her silence, I can feel her losing something. I don't know what it is, but it feels like something important to me. She can't believe that I'm getting close to figuring it out, that I'm willing to accept the truth, no matter how hard it is. Maybe she was waiting for me to turn away, for me to justify her silence. But I didn't. "I always thought you wouldn't notice," she says suddenly, and I hear the desperation in her words. "But you did notice. And now you want to hear the truth, Alexei." I nod. I can't answer with words because everything inside me has shrunk like a stone. I can't utter a single sound until she says what she's been hiding. She sighs. She seems to be deciding on something important, something that has been sitting in her soul for a long time, but there's no way she could say it. You know, Alexei, she continues. I've always tried to be the one you wanted to see. Someone who understands you, who supports you, who is ready to be your wife. But, she falls silent, as if she can't continue. She looks out the window, as if hoping there will be an answer there. I have become lonely, Alexei. You didn't notice it, but I felt empty, like I was disappearing. You were there for me, but you weren't here anymore. You were in your own world, your own work, your own business. You only saw your wife, not me. Her words are like a blow. I can't believe it. I always thought I was there for her. I always thought I was there for her. But it turns out I didn't see her. I didn't see her leave. Didn't notice how she was losing herself in this life. She continues, and her voice shakes, but she doesn't stop. I wasn't looking for this, Alexei. I wasn't looking to replace you. But when I met him, she stops, as if unsure of her words. He was just there, he made me feel like I was alive. Not just a wife, not just a mother, but a woman. A woman that someone notices, a woman who doesn't get lost in this gray reality. It wasn't about anything serious. It was just a moment where I could feel alive. I feel my heart clench. Everything I knew is crumbling before my eyes. She didn't betray me. She didn't cheat on me. She wasn't looking for a replacement. She was just trying to reclaim her identity, her importance. But why the hell didn't she tell me that? Why didn't she open up her soul? Why did I become something distant, aloof, rather than real to her? I don't know how I feel. I'm angry, I'm confused. At the same time, I can't judge her. I can't blame her. I must have been the person who was so self-absorbed that I didn't notice it all falling apart. You didn't mean to hurt me? I ask with a heavy feeling. She shakes her head. No. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just didn't know how to handle it, how I should be. I was lost, Alexei. And maybe it was my mistake, but I hoped that you would see that something was wrong. That you'd realize that I needed help. But I didn't know how to talk about it either. I couldn't just tell you that I felt empty. I was afraid you wouldn't understand. Her words feel like they're throwing me into a maelstrom. It's not the answer I was expecting. I was hoping to hear a confession of infidelity. I was hoping for guilt that would give me the power to change something, to fix something. But it didn't. She didn't betray me in the traditional sense. She was just lost. And now that I'm standing in front of her, it's clear to me that our paths have long since parted. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. My inner conflict is tearing me apart. I see her, a woman who was looking for support, understanding, love. I was there for her, but I didn't see her. But what now? Stay with her when I know I can no longer be who I used to be? Or walk away and leave her with her emptiness? I sat in the dark, in the very place that used to be my home. But now there was no home, no comfort. Only emptiness. This strange, threatening emptiness that filled the space between Natasha and me. Everything that had been important was useless. What seemed solid was fragile. I could feel myself being swallowed up by it. My mind couldn't stop. The same question that I'd been trying not to ask myself all this time was in my head. What to do now? How do I live with what I've learned? How do I move on if I don't know what's next? She didn't deceive me. She didn't betray me in the truest sense of the word. But she betrayed me in the deepest and most painful sense. She walked away from me. She left in search of herself, in search of something she couldn't find with me. And I realized that there was a lot I'd missed too. Everything she was hiding wasn't because of some other man, it was because she couldn't find support in someone who was supposed to be there for her. I had to realize that the person I loved was lost. She didn't leave to find someone else. She left because she had been alone for a long time. I could have been there for her, I could have supported her, but I was preoccupied with myself, my world, my problems, my achievements. I thought that if I worked, if I was successful, if I was a good husband, everything would be okay. But she didn't ask for any of that. She didn't ask for my care, my attention. She just asked to be there for me. And I wasn't there. I just didn't see her leave. My heart ached with the realization of it. I couldn't understand how I could have been so blind, so stupid. But it was even more painful to realize that there was no coming back now. Everything was ruined. My life, her life, everything we'd built, everything was ruined. But what do we do now? What's next? I could feel the time draining away. Time I couldn't use properly. Time that I'd wasted on just being around and not noticing. I didn't know what was next. I tried to find answers, but they weren't coming. I rose from my seat and walked over to the window. I could see the street sinking into darkness, the lights of the city flashing unstoppably, life going on even though everything around me seemed to stop. My thoughts kept swirling in my head, but every time I tried to find a solution, it disappeared. What's more important, her past or our future? I always thought that I could control the situation, that I could solve everything if I just worked and monitored our relationship. But now I realize that I can't control everything. I can't just turn back. I can't undo the loneliness she's endured. I can't go back to the moments when I overlooked her. I can't get back the love I lost by not noticing her. My eyes cloud over with disappointment. I feel the pain begin to clench in my chest. She must have been going through all of this too. She's suffered too. She felt lost too. And I wasn't there for her. I was busy with something more important. Maybe her feelings were so strong that she needed to get away to feel alive again. But why didn't she tell me that? Why didn't she ask for help? Inside me, everything is crumbling. I realize it's not just the destruction of something physical, it's the destruction of my whole life, my whole picture of the world. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to move on. I don't know if anything can be fixed. But something in me says I can't stay in this state. I can't just sit around and wait for the answer to come to me. I can't keep living in this shadow, this aching empty place with nothing. I have to make a decision. Maybe this is my chance. A chance for something new. A chance to be someone I wasn't before. Maybe I can change something about myself, something that will make my life real. Or maybe I need to realize that not everything in life is controllable. That all I can do is move forward, even if I don't know what's in store for me. Time passed. The moments stretched on and I continued to stare out the window, absorbed in my thoughts. I didn't know what would happen tomorrow. But I knew for sure that I would never be able to forget that moment when I realized that things were not as I thought they would be. I realized that life is not divided into black and white. It's much more complicated than that. And that this is, in the end, the most important thing I can realize. My life will never be the same. But more importantly, will I be able to accept it, or will I continue to search for answers that won't be found? That's a decision I have to make, that stays within me. And only I myself can answer that question.